Hello everyone, my name is Taiga and today I'll be bringing you a comprehensive guide on how to play the balanced income in 1v1's. This video is aimed for people that already have some experience with the game. However, if you're new, you should watch this video to gather tips and general ideas that will help you with the steep learning curve in this game. The guide is a compilation of things I've gathered by talking and playing with the best players in this game. I've made several live streams interviewing the top 4 players, including my live stream from the 17th of April 2020 with all the top 4. Link is in the description. Now that I've introduced myself and sourced all the information used to make this video, I think we can talk about divisions. You often neglect it, but a lot of times game deciding factor is the division matchup. Especially in competitive play, you need to give yourself all the cards to win instead of handing them to your enemy. The important thing to remember is all advantage is good advantage. When choosing your division to play, you must keep in mind what you want to achieve. There are many mistakes made by newcomers or even experienced players when it comes to choosing their division type and income. The most important thing you want to keep in mind while choosing a balanced income type is that you won't win in phase A against more aggressive income types. You have to hold your ground as best as possible and give up ground if that means a better position can be achieved. The first couple of minutes can be tempting. After all, the difference of units on the field isn't that big. Both sides start with 750 points worth of units, and favorable early engagements can make it look like you could push in. However, don't forget that after the first couple of minutes, the enemy gets an enormous income advantage, and all of those good traits can be covered if you decide to push early on, ending the game for you and making a late game recovery impossible. Always keep in mind when playing against Vanguard, Maverick, or Flatline that you are in for the late game. The longer you can hold the enemy away from getting the 15 flags, the higher your chances to win the game. Having said this, if you ever find yourself playing against a balanced income type, you need to keep in mind how deep your deck is. That means thinking your long game capabilities compared to your enemies. In some cases, when you play against an enemy with the same income, you can go for an aggressive playstyle. After all, both players have exactly the same points distribution throughout all the game. It should be noted, however, that defending is a lot less costly than attacking, so choose your move wisely. Against Juggernaut, you should try and win an A and B, and against V for Victory, you should try and set up a push in A and push the enemy in B, as you have 50 more points of income in that phase. After we cleared up how to play with your income, the question to what should I look for in my division comes up. In the already mentioned stream on the 17th of April, I discussed a tier list of the strongest divisions with Shaun. Shaun is the best balanced income player out there, and the rating of these divisions seem to directly reflect on how well they can play with the mentioned income type. On the screen you can see his personal division tier list. If you look closely, you'll see a lot of the highly rated divisions have great number of infantry, with all but 4 divisions in the tier A category being either mechanized or infantry divisions. I pointed that out because in the opinion of all players I've interviewed so far, infantry is key. Divisions with great infantry support, including Sturmtigers, Panzergrenadiers, as well as light bombers or off-map units are the absolute meta. So the main thing about the meta, and I quote Gonzo here by saying, this game is all about the infantry spam. I myself struggle to adapt to the meta and bought units like light bombers and off-map to stop infantry pushes all the time. But the truth is, and I'm quoting Gonzo again, the best way to stop an infantry push is by spamming more infantry. Right now I'll show you a clip of my game against Nilla. Throughout the entirety of it, I traded extremely well and had a real shot at winning it. As you will see, I'll drop the first off-map on top of a couple of infantry squads and move in to surrender them. That is what you should be trying to do at all times. Right after that, you'll notice me place an almost perfect off-map strike. However, I have nothing following it up. If you look closely, every infantry squad was pinned, and I had a real chance to push back. Instead of using that chance and exploiting it by bringing infantry to surrender the position and get a couple of flags back, I decide to bring in a plane. It's something I do over and over again. I bring in units such as planes or off-map crawlers to maybe kill 1 or 2 infantry squads. But really, what do you want to achieve with your off-map strikes? Killing 40, maybe 60 points in an infantry push won't do much for you if that means spending 140 points in an off-map artillery. 20 points infantry squads can be replaced really easily, and if you don't make sure to surrender everything affected by a bombing strike, or you don't use your off-map as an offensive tool to get rid of large areas and demoralize enemy infantry enough to get in and surrender them, you're better off bringing more and cheaper means to deal with the enemy infantry. You might be asking yourself, what does that have to do with playing a balanced income type? It has everything to do with it. You don't only need to know how to play with your income, you also need to know what units you should be using. Don't underestimate the power of units like Erzschuppen, especially if you have a commander. Talking about commanders, this leads me to my next point. You must take a commander if you have a lot of infantry. This isn't really up to discussion. You need the quality and quantity if you're a balanced division type. Otherwise, your enemy will roll over you. So Division 2 quality and quantity is not a question. You can and need to have both. Even the cheapest of units like Erzschuppen can become deadly. At 2 stars, their rifles become super accurate, their rate of fire increases, and they receive less damage. On top of it, stress taking is also reduced. There are only benefits when it comes to bringing in commanders. As a summary, you should have commanders if you have a lot of infantry. I think it's obvious, but a lot of times it is ignored. 200 points of stroke against 200 points of stroke with a commander always ends up with the commander side victorious. Even with units that are perhaps 1/3 of the price, the veterancy makes all the difference. With that out of the way, let's go back to division selections. We understand that infantry quantity and quality is king, though infantry alone doesn't win you the game. So you need your infantry support units such as good and cheap tanks, as well as snipers and infantry guns. As a list of divisions that fit almost all those criteria, the divisions that seem to fit the best are Grimmer Rapana, Hermann Göring, 1st Skyjäger, 20th Panzer, 25th Panzergrenadier Division, 78th Sturm Division, 352nd Infantry Division for the German side, and the 1st Polish, 3rd Canadian, 26th Strokowy, 84th Strokowy, and the 184th Strokowy for the Allied side. Shaun said on stream his usual 4 divisions for competitive play are the 1st Skyjäger, the 20th Panzer, the 25th Panzergrenadier, and the 352nd Infantry Division. He showed a lot of love for the 78th Sturm and Hermann Göring Division. A in-depth guide on how to build the 25th Panzergrenadier Division, like Shaun did, you can find over at Angrybird's channel. Link is in the description. In this next segment of the guide, we'll be talking about deployment as a balanced deck. However, before we get into this, I would like to quote Helmut von Moltke. And he says, "No plan survives contact with the enemy." Even if this quote was made by a Prussian general in the 19th century, it is still true today, and Still Division 2 is no exception. Over-planning for a game is extremely dangerous and can open you to situations where your tunnel vision due to your perfect planning you did before the game, or you don't know how to properly react because you didn't plan the enemy's move. Though at a later date, Eisenhower complemented this quote perfectly. Plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. You need to have a general idea of what you want to achieve. Having goals in mind are important, and the main goal you always need to have is to survive phase A and B. I know that isn't very helpful, but the second you start to think about phase A and B as phases you need to prevent the enemy to get 15 flags, things become a lot easier. You aren't playing to win early on, and taking ground will only force you to a position where you need to spend points you can't spare to hold this ground. Whereas if you had held your ground with the units you used to attack a position, you'd have a much better and more solid defensive line. There is no need to push, and there is no shame in conceding your enemy the 14 flags. It isn't the end of the world, and the bleed is minor enough for you to have time to come back comfortably. The game is about getting the 12-12 at the later phase. The second you do that, you are usually on a safe way to win. With that out of our way, what composition of units should I bring in? That isn't an easy question to answer, and I certainly don't have the perfect answer to this. You need to figure out what works for you yourself. However, I can point out the general ideas that might help you when deciding what units to buy and how to use them. I think at this point you already understood that you need to be defensive, and that you need to have a solid line to work with to trade well enough with your enemy. So what units should you usually use, and why? Infantry support guns are great, though they can't do everything due to their low rate of fire. They are best used to support your infantry, not to carry it. Machine gun units, especially MG42s, will always win against any infantry support gun, and that is very important to keep in mind. Snipers are great tools and can suppress units fairly quickly, making it so that high veterancy, high health squads can kill off machine gunners. Thus, most of the squads are only two-man squads, you're better off using them to support your main infantry. Individual infantry squads can be very good supported correctly, and the more you have, the better. Two-stroke squads will always win against a single squad with only two MGs. So what can you conclude from this? You can conclude a lot of things. When deploying, you can keep these things in mind, and when you start to think about it, you start to understand how to deploy correctly. Units placement is one of the most important things when deploying, and it cannot be underestimated. Infantry support guns are better deployed at 2000 to 1200 meters range from the enemy. MGs are to be deployed under 1500 meters range to 500 meters range from the enemy. They are also great alternatives to infantry support guns, in case no green cover is available, but the house is. Under 500 meters range, you are better off bringing regular infantry squads to their higher health and more flexibility. Anti-tank gun placement is also very important, and getting the right placement is key. You can't have your anti-tank gun near enough for it to be harmed by infantry and support guns, though it has to be close enough to kill whatever threat might arrive. Your best choice is placing anti-guns at maximum distance if you have no choice. Green cover is your best friend, and the stealth protection it gives you is key. Tanks are extremely important to have, though unless they are heavy tanks such as Tigers, Panthers, IS-2s, or Koenigstigers, they are really susceptible to AT guns and generally on reserve to either support infantry, get rid of things infantry can't, such as mobile AA guns, infantry support guns, or other tanks. Buying planes on deployment is generally not a good idea, especially if you have the balanced income type. So just forget they exist for the first minute. As the different factions, you obviously have different speeds on your transport vehicles, and this obviously affects how you deploy troops. As the Germans, you have access to the fastest standard trucks, and you should use that to your advantage. To deploy your forces on more favorable positions, that means if you can deploy on a town that is on the 50-50 line and that gives you a better advantage on a defensive position, you should go for it. If you're the Soviets, you have access to units like jeeps. You should use these units in a sort of guerrilla warfare to stall the enemy for the most time you can. Units with smoke such as anti-tank rifle squads and flamethrower squads are especially helpful. As the Hungarians, you have access to the best anti-tank rifle in the game for a cheap price. So using them to try and punish overconfident enemies is something you should consider. Your main trucks aren't as fast as the Hungarians, so setting up a solid line with your superior infantry is the best idea, even if you give it some ground. But giving up ground doesn't have to simply mean that you hand it to your enemy. You should make it so your enemy bleeds as much as possible for it. So the aforementioned quick moving units are perfect to punish your enemy without investing much. As a summary for this income type, it is very punishing to newcomers, and you should try and play incomes such as Flatline or Vanguard before going for a balanced game style. Those incomes offer you a better way to explore possibilities and allow a unique experience into the mind of your future enemies if you are to become a balanced player. As a last disclaimer, all the things I said in this video are not the absolute truth. They're all informations I've managed to gather during my conversation with the top players and my own experience in game. To make sure I got this right, I've asked Gonzo to help me, and he was especially helpful to help me write the deployment segment, so thanks to him. If you are a sub of mine on twitch.tv, you will have access to the script on this video. And if you'd like access to this and future content, make sure to check out my Twitch channel. Link is in the description. Anyway, that's really all. This video took a lot of effort to make, and I hope it was helpful to some of you out there. I should be releasing a new video about how to play Vanguard and Flatline in the near future. Anyway, until the next time, have a good day. Goodbye.